This is Dennis Ramundi with my co-host Phil Goldberg. Our guest today was Bob Roth, Executive Director of the David-Lynch-Foundation. What did you think, Phil?
Well, it was great to talk to him. As you know, as we were candid about, we've both known Bobby for all these years.
Hmm.
I hope listeners don't think it was too much of a family reunion, but he's doing wonderful work, and it's
Yeah.
wonderful to see people being this consistent in their dedication to something worthwhile for all these years. You know, and some of the idealism of those days maintained and finding useful outlets, bringing meditation to all these underserved populations.
Right.
It's great to know.
No, it was very inspiring. Like you, I got involved with TM years ago, and I have been practicing it for many years. And one of my concerns over the years, even when I was teaching it, is generally you're getting upper middle class people and all. There's a lot of the society that's not served or benefits from not just TM, spiritual practices in general, in the West anyway. And
Hmm.
here's this organization, and thanks to David Lynch, the filmmaker, who put a lot of his time and money into it. And they really are. I mean, they're teaching a lot of people in inner city schools. I've talked to a number of people who have visited the schools, very impressed. Boy, anything you can do to help these veterans coming back that are dealing with post-traumatic stress syndrome, God bless whoever does anything in that area. And, battered women, really Native American folks dealing with a lot of issues. And they've also done programs, I know, in Brazil and a number of
Yeah,
other countries. So I think that's great. And I think, again, I mentioned it in the interview with him, is that one of the areas that has inspired me most in what we're doing, talking about contemporary spirituality and people working in this area, is so many people like, was it Andrew Bucko and others,
Adam.
Adam Bucko, that where they've taken what they've learned in terms of spiritual techniques and teachings and sharing it with those that are really suffering in the world and helping to elevate their lives. So, it's inspiring. It's inspiring. It's encouraging, especially if we look at the world and some of the people that don't seem so concerned with the well-being of others.
Yeah, and I think what you mentioned is applies to all the different expressions of alternative spirituality, unconventional spirituality, sort of, especially the ones that concern teachings from the East being adapted into Western life. In the American Buddhist community, where people learn Vipassana meditation and other forms, and Zen, in the yoga world, of Hatha yoga in the yoga studio world, there's a lot of critique about it being a white middle class thing, and it's a valid
Hmm.
critique. And there's it's just the maybe it's a function of money and access and what the media pays attention to, but that tends to be the population served tends to skew toward affluent
Right,
white middle class
right.
people.
And I think.
And then there's the counterbalance of some people seeing that and then making an effort to
Mhm.
bring these valuable practices and teachings to underserved populations. And you see it in the yoga world, you see it in the Buddhist world. Obviously, you heard about it with respect to TM and Bobby, and many of the other spiritual organizations have outreach to other
Right.
populations.
I also enjoyed, Bobby, when he was asked about mindfulness and other meditations, other techniques. He said, "Look, everybody should have a toolbox with all kinds of tools on it because TM. I think it's been wonderful in my life, but for other people, maybe there's other techniques, other technologies, mindfulness, whatever, that work fabulously for them and all. And it shouldn't be a competitive arena where it's Coke
Yeah.
versus Pepsi, but more like, look, try this, try that, try whatever, and whatever works for you, great. Yeah, and I think you also when you brought out the concept of not of the immediate effects of it, helping alleviate people's problems sleeping or with anxiety or whatever. But then looking beyond that toward total maximization of human potential, or
Yeah.
full spiritual growth.
Well, that's an interesting question because it's one that has always been relevant. I always tell the story, and I don't know if it's apocryphal or not, but back in the days when we were teaching TM, I remember being told that, and it may have been from Maharishi himself, that in his very first lecture in the U.S., I believe in San Francisco, when he came to the mainland after Hawaii, he was speaking about higher consciousness and enlightenment and the usual subjects that were most relevant to the teachings at that time. And then somebody in the audience asked if TM would help him sleep, and he said yes. And the headline the next day was, Yogi says meditation cures insomnia. So, and the joke was, these teachers come to wake people up, and all they want to do is go to sleep. And now it's in the yoga world. People are concerned that the meaning of yoga and the essence of yoga as a spiritual awakening tool and set of practices is being overlooked or trivialized by it becoming about health and wellness.
Right.
But it's always been that way.
Right.
I'm working on this book about Yogananda. It happened to him in the 20s and 30s. People have their immediate needs, and you have to.
Right.
A good teacher addresses those needs,
right.
And the best teachers also let them know there's more to it.
Right.
And I think that's what Bobby was alluding to.
Yeah, we had this discussion with the editor of Yoga Journal, and for me,
right.
If somebody is doing yoga to look fit and to be more limber and all, and doesn't have a spiritual thought in their head, there's no problem with that for me, because
right.
if it's making them happier and fuller, they're growing spiritually. And at some point, if they continue to do it and they continue to grow at that, they're going to realize there's more to life than looking good on the beach, and being limber. And so I think it'll naturally come to them. And I think that most of the great teachers, spiritual teachers, saw that and didn't have a problem with that. And the expectation wasn't from day one that the aspirant would be seeking God, necessarily.
Right.
But they get them on a path, and then eventually those realizations come.
Yeah, you teach to what the student can hear and what the student is interested in. So all the cynicism about yoga and meditation being medicalized or psychologized, as Bobby said, you speak to the language of the times, but you also speak to the language of the individual.
Right.
And so if people find a doorway into deeper spirituality because they have back pain or high blood pressure, and they take up a practice that can be understood as a medical intervention, but is also a spiritual practice and has a deep effect on the mind and consciousness. Well, that just speaks to the versatility of these teachings.
Right. I was also interesting what Bobby said about celebrities and how they don't get out much and they talk to each other, and about how they share. Hey, there's a good yoga teacher down the street, or there's a meditation teacher. But it also, and I remember this from back in the 70s, or it was the 60s, when I heard Mia Farrow was going to India to study with Maharishi. There was some insight for me that, hey, even if somebody is rich and famous, they're maybe not feeling fulfilled. And that even people that are major celebrities in the world that we may think live, the lifestyles of the rich and famous, and boy, wouldn't that be amazing? That they're also seekers. They're also looking for greater peace and happiness.
And to me, as the guy who's written a lot of this history, when I give presentations about the Beatles' role in bringing India to the West, that's one of the things I always say. The media coverage when they learned TM and when they went to India was extraordinary. And I think one of the reasons was these are people who could have done anything they wanted in the world.
Right.
They had the money, the fame, everything. And they chose to go for an extended period of time to, a rather austere ashram on the banks of the Ganges. And everybody said, why? What's that about? Why are they even bothering when they have the world, the world is their oyster? And that was a huge teaching in and of itself.
Absolutely, it had that impact on me. Well, great information. I really enjoyed that. I was a little worried that we would sound like we were proselytizing, but I think
Yeah,
we dealt with it objectively. And honestly, to our listeners, Bobby Roth is a friend of ours. We've known him for 45 years. We've taught meditation together. We've been involved in a number of things together. But I think we covered it fairly and tried to give it from
yeah,
every angle and perspective. And I think he's genuinely a really good guy that's doing helping a lot of people, as is David Lynch
yeah.
with his foundation.
Yeah, and I don't see any reason why we shouldn't have our friends on. I mean, he paid us well to have him on.
There you go.
No,
All right.
Okay, Dennis.
Until next time, Spirit Matters Talk. Please tell your friends about us. Go to our Facebook page. We're on Twitter. It's all at Spirit Matters Talk. The website, of course, spiritmatterstalk.com. And more wonderful interviews coming up. And I have to say, Phil, I listened to our show after we do week after we do the recording, and boy, we've had some really fabulous people on.
Yeah, I agree. If we do say so ourselves.
So there you go. All right.
Okay. Bye.
Peace.